Hi, I'm David, and I'd like to talk about some of the influences on my game, Thousand Hells. So usually for a computer game, you talk about it being a cross of A and B. I don't really do that with Thousand Hells for several reasons. One is that I don't really think it is very directly influenced by other games. And if it is, there's actually a ton that influence it. And it's really not like any two games in particular. I do consider it, though, a cross between two things. And so I'll go into some of what that might be. Let's start with mythology. And the game is pretty obviously influenced by the Epic of Gilgamesh, when the hero goes into the underworld to find the secret of immortality after his best friend has died. The Mesopotamian mythology also gave us the story of the goddess Inanna, who goes into the underworld as well. And my collaborator, Robin Laws, recommended the book First Ghosts as a look at actually ghost stories in Mesopotamia. And I know he used some of the things in here also as input into his writing of the game. In particular, the Great Below underworld is very Mesopotamian influenced. Classic Greek mythology gives us the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, where the singer ends up going into the underworld, or Hades in particular, because he's Greek, and he wants to get his lover back and give the performance for all the gods of the underworld. And you may know how that one turns out. It turns out not so well for Orpheus. There's some other Greek mythology that is tangentially related to the underworld and going there and getting stuff. Hercules goes in and gets Theseus back. Jumping ahead a little bit to Viking times, there are stories in the Poetic Edda where Brynhild's Hellride talks about a woman going into hell to get her heritage. There's also the Kalevala, which has an underworld trip. And I know Aaron Reed drew pretty heavily on both the Finnish mythology and the Norse mythology for the Midnight North Hell that he wrote. King Arthur ended up going into hell after a cauldron in the Spoils of Annwn. There's a rendition of that in The White Goddess. And one of the features there is that clearly it's really dangerous, as only 7 come back from that raid on hell. In the Odyssey, which has lots of stuff where Odysseus tromps around, he does talk to the spirits of the dead and talks to a fortune teller, and in the process ends up meeting his dead mother and talking to her as well. I would be remiss in not mentioning the Lightbringer's Quest from Greg Stafford's Glorantha. Now, there really is no Glorantha in Thousand Hells. If you want to find Glorantha, you should play King of Dragon Pass or Six Ages. But the Lightbringer's Quest is a perfect example of someone gathering together his companions and going into hell and coming back with the prize. I also wanted to get Indo-European mythology sort of as core as I could, and I read a book called Indo-European Poetry and Myth. I had to get that on interlibrary loan. It pointed me to some Latvian and Lithuanian mythology as sort of the most pure form that hasn't been as altered by historic events like becoming Christian, but you'll see some of that in the Norse stuff. So the Indo-European stuff is the Other Sun underworld in the game. So Robin Law suggested that one of the underworlds be based on the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch. And so I went ahead and did that. We have the Hell of Nightmares. I also used a bunch of other artists from around the same time period when I gave art direction, other Dutch artists like Peter Bruegel. Another big influence is, of course, Ocean's 11, the Steven Soderbergh remake, where George Clooney gets together a gang of experts to go into, in this case, to go into a casino and get lots of money out. Probably now is the time to say that I would consider Thousand Hells to be a cross between Orpheus and Ocean's 11. You're going into hell and getting someone out along with your team of experts to help you do it. It's not really an influence on the game, but the song by Corner Shop, called Staging the Plaguing of the Raised Platform. Has the wonderful lyric, going into hell to get some people out, near the start. I have no idea what most of the song is about. The lyrics are kind of weird and you can understand them, but they're still incomprehensible. But Going into Hell was the working title of the game for quite a while. There's a bunch of things that really aren't influences, but I know some of the fans of Thousand Hells are also fans of the Underworld in general, so I can mention them. The novel Catabasis I recently read is very much like a Thousand Hells mission. The main character is going into hell to get her graduate advisor back out, and it's more of a sort of a grad school story than an underworld story, although it certainly is definitely an underworld story as well. The book, it's a short book called The Tale of the Nishan Shamaness. I read that a little bit too late to be a big influence, and her methods are a little bit different, and some of the way she goes into hell and back is not how the game works, but it's a great story of a plucky woman who goes into hell and comes back with someone who was taken improperly. It's not quite an influence either. I love the Nart sagas, and Shoshalan in the Land of the Dead has him going into hell and seeing stuff, but it seems to be more influenced by Christian theology of torment in hell, and that's really not what the game is about. It's not trying to present a Christian mythology or underworld in any way, and hell is not necessarily a place of torment. It's just where you go after you die, more like the Greek Hades. I recently read a short book called A Short Stay in Hell, which is kind of the Borges Infinite Library as an afterlife. There is an infinite library in the game, but it really has no connection to that story. And it's maybe a little surprising, but Dante's Inferno is really not an influence on the game. It's, again, a very Christian story, and that's not what we're doing at all. But the picture of Dante's Inferno was, in fact, the main menu background for quite a while. So once again, I have a bunch of influences, and I would not say it's so much influenced by other computer games, but you can consider it to be Orpheus meets Ocean's 11.